And as you can see from, we've got a partial microwave system. Not everything is hooked up just yet. And the other thing to notice there is Whitman County's rich topography. We're 2,200 square miles. There's a population of only about 47,000. Almost all of them, way over half, live in one small university town, and the population varies by $25,000 depending on whether schools in or out of session. Since we're funded by a 0.1% sales tax, funding is not really all that good. Similar sized county in Florida, I was shocked to learn just the other day, has a radio shop of 50 people. I have a staff of 3. 2 of them are absolutely worthless because me, myself, and I, we all ride the same truck every time. And what that means is that I'd really like to have sites that were only 5 miles apart. I'd like to have sites that were only 15 miles apart. And yet we got a simulcast in a terrain-rich environment. Again, we are rich in topography. There's lots of bumps and clumps. And good radio sites? You gotta be kidding me. Not happening. The east half of the county has 3 mountaintops, which are crowded, noisy, and high. The west half of the county has nothing but rolling hills. That's why they invented the hillside combine. It's a 700-foot hill here, 600-foot hill there, just crowded together. The roads typically run along the bottom, except when they run up and over. And it's a timing nightmare. I'll tell a little story of myself at this point. When I first came to the county to interview, I drove in from the west, and I'm looking at this train, and the conversation I had with myself is, are you really stupid enough to try and do simulcast in this environment? Unfortunately, the answer was yes. So the high sites in the east half of the county are necessary to cover the east half of the county, and they're absolutely brutal in the west half of the county. Forget it. You're going to have overlap zones that are just unacceptable, and then you're going to be covered by a site literally a quarter mile away from you, and then you're going to disappear behind a hill and you'd be covered 40 miles away. So, before I got to the county, decided they needed simulcast. In the map below, and we're only going to stick with the left-hand side of the map there. There's the state line. It's just a map I wrote on short notice from the IT guys. The dark blue area there had 8 repeaters that the fire departments used, and they switched back and forth. They could never hear each other. Big troubles. They really had to work together. So let's simulcast, right? It's a great idea. We'll just grab all 8 repeaters and simulcast them. By the way, the clue is down there at the bottom. We're really going to have to do that with more than 3. So let's simulcast. Let's use TV 9100 base stations. Let's use Gates Airnet Express. And, all of the rest of this simulcast gear that we're so familiar with. Notice that I put up there on this slide, this is a grenade. The reason that's there is this is going to be posted on its site. Do not copy this ever. It's wrong. Okay, is the disclaimer clear now? Okay, here's the problem. We had been told way back when the TV 9100 first came out, some underinformed salesperson said, oh yeah, you can do analog simulcast with a TV 9100. No, you can't. No, you can't. No, you can't. But the salesperson told me and I believed him. My bad, I didn't go to tech support. But you can't do analog simulcast with TV 9100. It's really good for P25 simulcast, but you can't do analog. But I believed it. I trusted the salesman. And so we bought pieces and parts, and again, I told you we're budget limited, so we built it like Johnny Cash built a Cadillac, one piece at a time in my lunchbox. We bought pieces and put them in and ran them as conventional repeaters until we could change out all the Quantars and get everything the same. And the big cutover day came. It was a disaster. I had people in blue shirts with sidearms on my front door. This is not a good tech. The users suffered a lot. We turned the system on and off. I'd go back to the model and I'd fudge the numbers and I'd make timing changes and I'd make level changes and all of the things. You know, just no design's perfect. It's just maybe close. So obviously, I made a mistake, right, Steve? And again, since it's a three-man shop, and two of those guys are really dumb, and the third one was trying to figure out what did he do wrong. So finally, I said, okay, maybe it's the backhaul. Maybe it's the backhaul. You know, maybe the MDR 8000 really doesn't work well for backhaul. So I'm going to test the delays, right? And I got a test receiver up on the mountaintop, so the easiest way to test the delay is just simply put in a copper loop up and down, see if it can be stable or not stable. Okay? No simple. I can do that in an hour or two. Drive up the mountaintop, drive back to the head end, and do the test. Well, I expected it to be unstable, and it wasn't. So where do you go from here? Well, let's do a one-site, one-transmitter simulcast, which isn't simulcast at all, but we're going to use the simulcast timing. Let's take a look and see what happens. Let's take a look and see what happens. Now, at this point, I'm going to show you what happened, but because it's actually in real time, I need to warn you, we're going to use the simulcast TIMs. We're going to key up one transmitter. It's 60 feet, vertical feet away from my test transmitter. So we have a one-site system. Timing is still supposed to be stable, right? In the upper left-hand corner of the video I'm going to play, which is unfortunately shot with a cell phone, so watch the timing in milliseconds. So we're going to get this to start. Okay, Ed, how come?
I'm not sure the video's going to work. You may need to wave your hands.
The video is absolutely the best part. I'm so sorry that I can't get it to work, but here's what you would have seen if I got that video working. You would see that instead of instability in the third decimal place of milliseconds, you would see jumps from 600 to 800 milliseconds. That's not simulcast timing. That is not going to happen. Friends, I got to tell you, I almost fell over. I was sitting on a stool, looking at this measurement, and I almost literally fell on the floor. It was so terrifying. So that test setup's wrong. So I tried it again. No, the test setup's right. It just isn't going to work. At this point, this is the reason for all of the unindicted co-conspirators in the room. My credibility is shot. I'm going to try something here. I'm going to try and go to the back one. Find a mouse. No, I'm not. Okay, I was going to try and get that video to play. So what did I learn from that? I learned that TV9100 is not the right product for analog simulcast. It was going to be so cool. I was going to put in analog simulcast. When I could upgrade the subscriber units, we'd do P25. My sheriff would be happy. Life was going to be wonderful. Our radio doesn't like that. Do not try and do that. So the things I learned are, don't use the TV9100 for analog. Never let a manufacturer give you specifications orally. If it's a critical specification for you, make them write it down. Put it in the file, save it. Never, ever, ever let the salesman and the manufacturer tell you orally. Always, always, always ask tech support. When I called tech support and I said this, they said, what sales guy told you that? Okay, my God, I'm slowly falling. Always have a fallback plan. cut this over, because we're a one-man shop, isn't worked out a fallback plan, a way to go back. How do I undo what you just did that was a disaster in a big hurry? Because, oh, really? You actually have cops that are, got a hostage situation going. It started about an hour after the cutover. This is not a happy day. This is not a happy day. There are cops with guns looking for me. And if at first you don't succeed, you got to go back and change the approach and try it again. Okay, enough on that system. It's telling me that I gotta pick up the pace here a little bit, or else I'm gonna get in time control. Enough on that system. I jumped on the grenade, but that doesn't change the fact that we still got to do simulcast in Whitman County. The city of Pullman, which is home of WSU Cougars, it's where half the population is, also provides coverage to the one and only commercial airport in the county. It's a small airport. There's only about 6 commercial flights a day. For years, the accepted practice was when you went to the airport, you didn't talk on the radio unless you walked out to your patrol car and talked on the mobile. And fire. So we go get Simplex, right? No, not exactly. They got a federal grant to realign the runway. And we're actually going to talk about these sites. I'll show you a picture in just a minute where they were. The remainder of the city, the police department had a transmitter at Skyline Water Tank. Not the highest place in town, but high enough. The town's basically 4 hills and 2 intersecting valleys, roughly perpendicular. The cops were always down in the valleys, and so it was okay. They had an aux receiver at Webster Hall. Fire had coverage from Webster Hall only, which is on the university campus. It's really about 800-foot tall building in the center campus. So, coverage was pretty much okay, except if you stand on the roof of Webster Hall and you look towards the airport, you see hills. And if you walk the other end of Webster Hall and you look towards the airport, you see taller hills. So here's actually a picture. You can see the airport out there and the hills in between. The Webster Hall site in roughly the center of the picture is on campus. 800-foot tall, rooftop only, no vertical separation, inadequate horizontal separation to fit a lot of antennas in there without expensive combiners. And did I mention we're budget limited? The Skyline Drive site is on another hill where you come into town there on the left-hand side. It's about 250 feet lower at the tower top. And coverage was truly marginal. The Whitman radio site up at the top of the street, at the north end of town, was, because we couldn't do simulcast, was a manually activated by relays backup site where you could do police and fire by switching relays. That was the State of the Union when we started out, and then they got a grant to realign the runway at the airport and extend it to bring in more commercial flights. But now TSA says you must have in-building portable coverage and on-runway portable coverage 100% of the time, and it's got to work with the rest of the town. Oh, and we've got grant money. Great, you've got grant money. I don't have time. So I brought Joe in and made him do the design. Peter and Mike actually got involved in that as well. We did, in fact, do a 5-site simulcast system there. We used GTR 8000s. We used the Net Express IP muxes because the city had fiber through part of it. We had 23 gig microwave through part of it. And because the city owned the fiber, I was able to hold their feet to the fire and get a very low latency through the IP system. We're actually, that system came together very happily accepted, that Peter Abraham and I learned in the School of Hard Knocks, that you have to test every subscriber. And we turned the system up. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. It was so good. We were high-fiving. And then about a day later, the police officers keep calling and they say, "This sounds like," a word that my wife wouldn't want me to use. And we said, so we'd go out and test it. No, it's great. It's wonderful. And between Peter and I, we had 4 or 5 different flavors of portables to test with, and a couple different brands of mobiles. It was wonderful. Unfortunately, the police officers had another model portable. It didn't like it. The modulation was just a touch too hot, and it wouldn't work. So, let's see. That's pretty much the story there. I'm going to keep moving along. Here's the updated Skyline site. Both police and fire there, staged ahead of time, just brought in the rack, bolted it down, hooked up the antennas, good to go. That's the airport site that caused the simulcast. That was an entirely new site. Just build it, pop it in, and go. There's the airport runway in the background. By the way, just as an aside, you should know that if the airport manager is pushing for the site, you can actually get one through the FAA in under a week. Just saying. There's the actual equipment again at the airport, nothing really special there. This is the head end site. It's Whitman. It is the head end for all 6 present and future simulcast systems. By the way, when I spec'd that shelter, I thought it was always going to be half empty. Lessons learned on that one. Not all subscriber units are created equal. Always test with every flavor, especially ones that you users have access to. And simulcast has distinct advantages. I'm going to show you one now. That used to be the only police transmit site. The police users never noticed that antenna issue until I did a show and tell over a month later. Previously, that would have been a channel totally down because I didn't have a spare antenna on site and I don't have a captive tower crew. I'm too old and broken to be climbing towers. And all of the virtue that lived inside of that antenna was electrodeposited on the fiberglass. Okay, the county still needs simulcast. In the Magenta area, there was an aging system that used tensor muxes and quantars. It wasn't as well optimized as we'd like. And the tensor units were starting to fail on me. So that was the next plan. We replaced that one real quick. We used GTR 8000 base stations. We used T1 muxes, entirely separate system. And just because I lost credibility by jumping on a grenade, I had to bring in an outside consulting firm that was AdCom engineering for that one, and to basically check and make sure that I wasn't going to jump on another grenade again. That leaves us now with, we have to simulcast the rest of the county. Brought in Tom and Mike from Hatfield and Dawson. I had this notion that I should divide the county and keep that coverage from the west on the west. Hadn't exactly worked out the gory details. Brought Tom and Mike in, they worked out the gory details. We're actually going to do 3 simulcast cells. They're slightly different than I had originally envisioned, but probably a better idea. And for the sheriff, because sometimes we're lucky enough to have 2 deputies on duty, and if there's one 45 minutes code away from the other end, from his department at the other end of the county, they need to hear each other without relying on dispatchers to necessarily wake up and smell the coffee. Okay, Ed's telling me I got to hustle up. So we're going to perma patch them together and allow them to for all the loaded audio to go out. So it's going to be 3 separate simulcast cells with overlap, perma patched together. So deputies, if they drive too far out of the overlap between those 3 cells, we'll have to switch to the right channel. But instead of having 13 repeaters as they have now, they're going to have 3. They'll perceive that as an improvement. They're smart enough to know if they're in the north part of the county or the southwest part of the county. The opportunity for the dispatchers to select the wrong frequency and error goes from 16 possible choices to 1, the button and talk. That's a big, big positive for the deputies. Fire and EMS will change cells when they cross familiar to them fire district boundaries, and they're not going to have a problem. And again, it will reduce the opportunity for the dispatchers to make possible human errors from 15 choices to one that's much more obvious to them. The hardware that we're going to use is basically, I'm still figuring out what I'm going to do about base stations. There's choices out there, and everything else is familiar to you. That's the slightly upgraded microwave. We're starting to get rings. There's 4 new sites planned as money falls off the money tree. And we're upgrading all of the microwave that you see there and the new hubs to bring the rest of the sites into IPMPLS using its Nokia now. And I think that's it. That's my contact information, and I think I didn't run too badly over.
Great, thank you, Steve.
Steve, I think it's worth adding that here at the show I had the opportunity to talk to other manufacturers too. And I believe that, after talking to others, that the grenade that you found with the TB9100, that's not the only manufacturer that has a base station capable of both P25 and analog. You can only do the simulcast. They are not alone in that.
This is just a grenade.com, and you're absolutely right. There's another that I couldn't jump on.
So it's not unique to take.
No, by all means, not.
Many manufacturers share those experiences that we all get to find out about, and I'll take that as a time to mention the fact that, to the best of my knowledge, MTR 3000s are still not NLT simulcastable, and in the Kenwood line, the NXR series is simulcastable, but the 710, the 10 version, is not. So those are the warnings that I've heard in the past. I'm passing along. If and when I get new information, I'll update you, but that's my understanding right now. Thank you very much, Steve. These slides that are here and all the presentations will be online and in the notebooks we send out in the next few weeks. Also, there will be YouTube videos of these presentations so you can share the information with the folks back home. This morning's next speaker is Joe Blasher from Washington State. Joe's a registered professional engineer in 8 states and the principal and founder of AdCom Engineering. Prior to starting AdCom Engineering in 1979, he worked for Motorola in a small telephone and electronics manufacturer. Joe's been engineering and installing simulcast systems since the early 70s. AdCom Engineering has worked on over 500 communications projects, ranging from low-band paging systems to 900 meg trunking systems. Joe has freely shared his experience with us since the first simulcast forum 20 years ago. This morning's information is going to be about simulcast theory. We'd like to thank Joe, and by the way, time-wise, it's getting to be about 9:45. So my guess is that this one I'm running over about 10 minutes. Apologize for that. Those of you that need to get to the show, please do. But again, it'll probably be about 25 minutes or so for the presentation. And with that, I introduce Joe.
Thanks, Ed. I see a lot of familiar faces out here, of course. None of you have gotten any gray or hair or anything since we started talking. We've all stayed the same relative age, right? So this is Simulcast Forum XX. I told Ed, I said I want to keep doing these until Simulcast Forum XXX, because then I want to see what his entertainment's going to be here. So what I thought I'd do is, over the years, we've gotten up here, we've talked about all the practical stuff. So I thought, do something totally different, take a new engineering approach and talk about something that's not practical. So we'll talk about theory, right? So do something a little different. I'll see if I will have all the same issues. Whoops. Well, that's interesting. Now it's not changing on this screen, but it's changing. All right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the theory topics. Obviously, this is a relatively short presentation, so we can't get into too much detail, but there's a few things Some of these are kind of like simulcast myths, maybe. We'll talk a little bit about, and hopefully it'll help with, I overhear some discussion occasionally about things like site spacing and all that. And so hopefully some of this will help with some of those discussions, and maybe add a little clarity, or not, maybe some hilarity, one or the other. So controlled interference, we'll talk about that a little bit. The transmit control signals with simulcast. Obviously we have to control frequency and phase, audio, and I'll talk a little bit about that with audio and with data. And we'll talk a little bit about coverage, capture effect, and overlap, because those are the things that really matter. So controlled interference, right? So if we take just a single site system and you operate the mountains, or you operate a town, obviously you get multipath. I mean, it's just a fact of life. Maybe if you're in Kansas and you're out in a cornfield, you might not get multipath much, but in almost any other environment you do. And of course, multipath has a lot of bad effects. It's bad enough to make your audio sound distorted. P25, one of the things that we found living in the mountainous area and doing a lot of our engineering work out in the mountainous areas is that P25 does not like multipath. And it makes it even worse. We've got a lot of just single site systems like this that go in that the P25 system performs far worse than even narrowband analog in those areas, and certainly worse than wideband analog. And so it's really a problem. And so if you're going to put P25 in any mountainous areas, get a portable base station and go out and do some drive testing, because you may find that you'll have wide areas where there is no coverage. So here's the problem. So we had simulcast in here, right? Well, now all of a sudden, not only do we have, we're purposely creating multipath, right? So not only do we have now two direct signals from sites A and B, but now we also have created all of these additional indirect signals. And so when you're that poor little fire truck down there trying to receive a signal, you're getting RF from all over the place. And that's really the crux of the problem with simulcast, is how to control the multipath in such a way that it's working for you instead of against you. And then the other part of this, actually, you have is there a pointer? Yeah, oh well. Okay, so, all right. So there is, so the big issue here is, you got a pointer? Well, that's somebody that works for me is good. I'd like to get here. Okay, so why is this an issue? Well, if we look at the receiving process, I mean, it's typical receiver, right? No magic here, RF amplifier, typically a mixer, and then the IF now, of course, in a lot of radios is not really an IF anymore. It goes right into the DSP, and it's all math, right? Hopefully it's not common core math, but it is math. And here, voice and data. So the real issue is what happens when we take these multipathy signals that are all supposed to be on the same frequency, and if it's from a single transmitter, for sure it's on the same frequency, but if it's a highly accurately controlled, stable transmitter simulcast, they're going to be essentially on the same frequency, but they're all going to be on different phase when they come into the front end of your receiver. This is where the problem is. And as Steve sort of alluded with different manufacturers, one of the problems with simulcast is it didn't used to be such a big problem when everybody sort of had traditional FM discriminators as receivers. But now, you come in here and you still have some radios that are sort of like real radios, right? And then the rest of the radios are computers. And so you don't know exactly how that DSP is going to respond and decode this very, very complex signal that's coming in through the front end. So one of the problems in simulcast is that you can find that your user radios may experience, the user experience may be different depending on which brand of radio it is, and not even just brand, but which model of radio, which firmware revisions in the radio, and all of that. So one of the things, when you're doing simulcast, and if you're having problems, be sure you kind of look at the user radio piece of it and see, are some radios sounding better than others? Is, CTCSS tones, we've seen wide varieties in the ability of different radios to detect CTCSS tones at different deviation levels. So that's something that you can check. But This is really, this is really an important thing, and it really does affect how the radios, what the user experience is, right? Your infrastructure could be perfect, but if the user radios aren't reporting, aren't decoding properly, then the user experience is not good. So, transmitter signal control. Well, we all know that, if you've been to any of these things, that we got to have accurate oscillators. And so what's the big deal here, and why do we have to have everything matched? And, there's some sort of holy war, maybe for lack of a better term, sometimes about using offsets. So this is just a brief reminder that, when you go to the mixer on a receiver, you get the sum and difference of the frequencies, and so you end up with 310 megahertz. Okay, that's easy, they filter that out of the IF strip. But the other part is this 1 hertz that's in there, and that can sound like a rolling fade, or if it's a half a hertz, or if it's a quarter of a hertz. That's why you need to be, so accurate on the frequency. Now, what happens in some places is people want to put in, well, let me back up. So one of the issues is that frequency lock does not mean phase lock. And there are some base stations, in fact, I would hazard, I guess, that most of the base stations around have this problem, and that is the frequency might be right on, but the phase might drift plus or minus half a cycle. Well, half a cycle is plus and minus 90 degrees, right? And so when you got 1 plus and 1 minus, you're 180 degrees out, you're going to end up with a null in your RF area. And so what can happen is if that null, if that phase shift occurs over a really slow period of time, like maybe every few minutes, what you can find in your area is you can find what sounds like a rolling fade through your coverage area. So if you put your portable on a desk, you listen to it, 1 or 2 transmissions will be full quieting, the other ones might kind of drift in and out. And the level might, if it's bad enough, you might get to the point, typically you only have two sites, you might get to the point where the receiver might actually squelch up. Problem is, there's not much you can do about that. So one of the solutions that people sometimes do is they want to put an offset in. So they say, well, let's put 20 hertz in there, and then we don't listen to that rolling fade anymore, but now you have to listen to 20 hertz, right? So, or you put in 10, or you put in 6, or you put in some other number. Our experience and our recommendation is that you don't do that, because we have generally found that the users aren't very happy by listening to either kind of a chuff, 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 chuff kind of a sound, or they're, if you're going to use CTCSS on your system, then you end up with a problem there as well. You can end up with some interference between the two. So our, most simulcast sites are not just 2 sites. You get 3 or 4 sites mixed in, and typically this little phase problem goes away because you've got RF coming in from multiple sites. So audio control. So there's a lot of debate about how close you have to make the audio signals. I think most everybody agrees that 30 degrees, the audio waveform needs to be within 30 degrees of each other. So where does that come from, right? Well, and how do you actually convert that to time? Because nobody goes out and measures phase, usually they measure time. So, if you use 1,000 hertz as a reference, you got 30 degrees, you got 360 degrees in one cycle. Divide that by 30, you get 12. You take it at 1,000 hertz, it's 1 millisecond. Divided by 12, you get 83 microseconds. And that's kind of the rule of thumb, is the maximum that you should be, the maximum delay that you can tolerate between 2 signals. However, note that this is a 1,000 hertz, right? So how many of you are transmitting a steady 1,000 hertz tone, right? Not too many people. If you do, you get a lot of complaints from the users. So the problem here is that if you look at 2,000 hertz, right, the maximum now is 42 microseconds. Well, why do we care about 2,000 hertz? Yes, voice is at 2,000 hertz, but if you look at the spectral density, there's not much energy at 2,000 hertz. But how many of you are doing plectron paging tones? Anybody still out there using old plectron tones? If you are, a lot of those are up, some of them are above 2,000 hertz, right? And even if you're using some of the other paging tones, or you're using DTMF, or using any of those things, you got signals that are above 1,000 hertz. You will not, if you use 83 microseconds as your timing limit, and you've got plectron tones at 2,600 hertz or 2,400 hertz, they're not going to be in phase within those overlap areas. So you have to use these smaller numbers if you're going to use those tones. Or in some cases, what we've done is we've had the user agencies convert to like Motorola Quick Call 2 or something where you can use paging tones down below, below a kilohertz. So, but here's the other thing: at 200 hertz, right? That's the range where you're in with your CTCSS tones, about 420 microseconds. The reality of it is, with most CTCSS tones, as long as you're not inverted, which you find quite often, you don't really have to worry about the timing with CTCSS tones. I mean, 420 microseconds, that's a long distance, right? So, so it's not really a big issue on PL tones. It is a big issue on a lot of people. So here's what happens with, so everybody goes, well, why is 30 degrees? What happens if you actually go above that? This is a graph, here a plot of two, 1 kilohertz tones, well, actually it doesn't matter what it's that are equal amplitude. Now, I did this to make the math easy, right? Because, okay, and of course, in a properly aligned simulcast system, the tones should be equal amplitude. But here's what happens at 35 degrees. When you mix those two tones together with just 35 degrees offsets, it looks pretty good here at 30. It's not exactly a sine wave, but it's pretty close. At 35 degrees, look what starts to happen to the signal. At 45 degrees, it's not even recognizable anymore as a single sine wave. So this shows that it's pretty critical. If you start getting, up into the 90, 95 microsecond range of delay, your audio is going to start getting pretty distorted. And you might still be able to understand it listening to it, but things like tone decoders and that kind of stuff aren't going to work. So, this is why 30 degrees is sort of set as the max. Now with data, it's the same kind of thing, except we don't have sine wave directly. This is the chart from TSP 88. You can see, depending on whether this curve here is for linear simulcast modulation, this is for not. You can see that with LSM, so it's like around 2 to 2.4% bit error rate is kind of the limit for, and that's for the normal audio, limit for normal audio rate. The receivers typically squelch at 5, squelch at 4, audio stop at 5. So you can see out here, you're at about 60 microseconds of multipath delay that you can tolerate. And over here, you're about 25. Here's the thing. This is for total multipath delay, right? This isn't your simulcast delay. This is total multipath delay. So if you're going to do simulcast, and let's say you've got 30 microseconds of delay just from your timing offset, and now you go to mountains, and you're going to add 40 microseconds of multipath because you're in a canyon, it's not going to work. So this is sometimes why P25 simulcast gets a little tricky. If you're in Kansas again, or some relatively flat area, it's not so bad. But when you try to do this sometimes in the mountains, if you have overlap, or if you have overlap, then you can have a problem. This is also why you have problems in the mountains, particularly on non-LSM signals with regular simulcast. I mean, with just regular P25, because 30 microseconds is not a lot of, that's basically 6 miles of path difference, and in the mountains you can get that pretty easy. This is right out of TSP 88, so if you want to give us some good curves in here. So let's talk about capture effect, because this talks about overlap. So in capture effect, we have the ability of the FM detector to select between one FM signal and another. So you don't notice it a whole lot in land mobile, especially not now that you're narrowband, because capture effect is not as effective. You really notice it on FM broadcast. That's where you really hear it. You can drive along and you run into the range of another FM station on the same channel, and if your radio just switches, right, now you don't hear the other one at all. Narrower the deviation, though, the less capture effect. So the real issue is, this is the area, so it's the overlap area that we care about. I hear a lot of people say, you can't put transmitters farther apart than 5 miles, and some people say 2 miles, and whatever it is. None of that matters. All that matters is the overlap area. You can have transmitters 100 miles apart, and your simulcast system will work just fine. But you can't have a 100-mile overlap area, or you're going to be hosed. So So the thing is to remember here is that RF travels at 5.4 microseconds per mile. The miles add up after a while. It seems like 5.4 microseconds, man, that's really whizzing along, right? But over time, you get 10 miles, that's 54 microseconds. 20 miles is 108 microseconds. What's our difference? That we were looking at before is 83, right? So the reality of it is, if you're in capture, if you have two sites, we'll make it simple, you're in capture area A and you're in capture area B, those can be any size. You don't really care what they are, right? So it doesn't matter what your site spacing is. What matters is what your overlap area is. And this is the area you can't exceed 83 microseconds in between the edge, between these two edges. So you know, people get all hung up about that, and I can show you, I'll show you later on here, a plot of sites. We've got a whole system that's got sites that are in the 5, 6, 7, 8 mile separation difference, and there's overlap all over because the site that's 8 miles away or 10 miles away is talking back into the network. You can't really build a multi-site, well, maybe in flatlands you can. Where I'm at, you can't build a site where even if you put them all 5 miles apart, you're going to have a site that's 20 miles away because it's up high, looking back into one of those sites that's, you know, only 5 miles apart. So the reality of it is you have to control overlap areas. So here's an example, right? So here's a site. It's 20 miles to the fire station. It's 2 miles to this other site. Difference is 97 microseconds. If you're in the capture area, if you're close enough to this site right here, you're going to be okay. If you're outside the capture area, you're not okay. And you say, well, this is 20 miles, right? This is 2 miles. Wouldn't I be in the capture area? Well, here's what we find lots of times, is this is a mountaintop site. This site's in the valley, long ways away. There's fire trucks on the edge of the mountain underneath this antenna. And so what happens is, you're not in capture here. In fact, sometimes you might even actually be in capture from this site clear over here because this is line of sight, but this isn't. So it gets really difficult managing these kind of situations unless you can control your RF signal. There's another one, and fire truck's right in the middle. I mean, you're 22 miles apart. You know, total site distance there might be 35 or 40 miles between those sites, but your difference is only 10 microseconds. That's going to work just fine. Here's what you're more likely going to run into, right? So, in fact, even in the flat areas, we've run into this a few times doing some work for some people in the Midwest, where this fire truck is on an overpass, right? So normally you're driving down, you're kind of, earth curvature blocks the site that's a long ways away. And so you get up on this overpass that maybe lifts you up about 40 feet above the average terrain. Now, you can see every site in the county from that place. As soon as you go down off the overpass, all of a sudden, radio system sounds great. Go back up on the overpass, which also happens to be a lot of times where the law enforcement officers sit right on the on-ramp, looking for speeders. But that is, so now you get 27 microseconds here. But look at here, 189 microseconds. This isn't going to work. So how do you manage this? Well, you have to control the coverage. That's really what it gets down to. And it's not so hard to do on 800. It's really hard to do on VHF. Because VHF just wants to talk everywhere. So we've been really successful by using down tilt. Sinclair has them. We use 12-degree down tilt antennas. You got to use those kind of numbers. So if you try to use a 3 dB or 3 degree or 6 degree, if you really look at the pattern, you find you're really not cutting enough energy out of the horizon. You've got to put the horizon in a null on the antenna and just push that signal right down into the dirt. Advantage is it gives you really good coverage right around your site, right? And then you make the transition, a little bit better. So here's an example. This is a plot I used actually in the previous presentation, but it was for wideband versus narrowband. But what I want to do is show that all these black areas here are overlap areas that are from delay distortion, and these are all sites. There's 11 sites in this area here, and many of these sites are only a few miles apart. But look at all the simulcast overlap distortion. And the way we resolve this, in a lot of cases, is we have to reduce some of the transmitter power significantly. Some of these sites are only 5 watt sites. People want 5 watt sites, but everybody wants to use a portable radio these days. meters, right? So it doesn't do you much good to have a 100-watt site if you're just trying to talk back and forth to a portable radio. Your system becomes an alligator. So this is, shows that even if you have close site spacing for sites, that's not really the answer. The answer is controlling your overlaps. That's really what you have to do. And if you either can do it by terrain, you can do it by power, you can do it by antenna pattern, but that's really what you need to do. So, so don't worry too much about what your site spacing are. Worry about where those overlaps are. That's the biggest issue. I think that's it.
Thank you, Joe. This wraps up today's project and technology portion of the Simulcast Forum. Those of you that are able to stay and would like to learn more about NetExpress queue configuration, that will start about 10:30. We'd like to give one more round of applause for the two Steves and Joe.